Science fiction is not what it used to be. There was a time when tuning into a Star Trek episode gave you a hopeful glimpse into the future. But today our science fiction is a lot more of the pessimistic variety. Think popular shows like Westworld and Black Mirror. Even the new Picard miniseries is a lot darker compared to The Next Generation. This shift represents a change in public perception of the future, and that isn't really a good thing. Science fiction has long driven humanity's trajectory into the future. When Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon over 50 years ago, it was a culmination of over a decade of engineering, but it was also the culmination of a whole lot more. How long had humanity looked up at the moon and dreamed of going there? Well, the first written story that I could find about traveling to the moon comes from 125 AD in True Stories, which is a satire of the Odyssey. In this story, our heroic travelers get carried to the moon via waterspout. Interestingly, this is not only the first story I could find about travel to the moon, it's the first fictional work that includes space travel as well as interplanetary war. But let's move forward to 1638, when Francis Godwin wrote The Man on the Moon, or a Discourse of a Voyage Thither. That's just 30 years after the invention of the telescope. In this story, a Spanish explorer gets marooned on an island, and in order to escape, he domesticates the flight power of geese, kind of like how James and the Giant Peach does. While traveling to the moon via goose machine isn't that much more plausible than being carried there on a waterspout, this is the first example I could find of lunar travel that isn't from a dream or from magic, it is from human invention. This is an idea that would plant the seeds in minds for generations to come. In 1865, Jules Verne wrote From the Earth to the Moon. This was about a bunch of post-Civil War gun enthusiasts who basically wanted to build an enormous space cannon. Still pretty far-fetched, but we're getting somewhere. Verne made remarkably accurate calculations about how long it takes to ballistically travel to the moon from the Earth. The launch used actual gunpowder explosives, and it was even launched from Florida. Which brings me to Destination Moon, a movie that came out in 1950. That's 7 years before we even launched a single satellite. This is a fictional telling of an actual rocket launching from Earth and landing on the moon, and it's remarkable how similar this is to the actual Apollo 11 mission that would take place 20 years later. Science fiction begets science nonfiction. See, by the late 1960s, the public was on board with the Apollo program mostly because they already understood the language of a lunar mission. Newton's first law, launch countdowns, lunar landscapes, all of these things came from science fiction first. Then the public was interested in making it reality.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Apollo 11 landing on the moon was probably the most inspiring thing in history. It certainly inspired me. I'm not sure SpaceX would exist if not for Apollo 11.
Now, this train of inspiration continues to this day as we proceed into this next generation of space travel. SpaceX's project, Starship, is remarkably similar to the single-stage rocket from Destination Moon, but only really in aesthetics. What Starship actually is a 100% reusable launch vehicle. Their current rocket, Falcon 9, is only partially reusable. Starship will be 100% reusable. Both the booster stage and the upper stage will land back on Earth where they can be refueled and launched again. If this actually works, this will fundamentally change what's possible in space. I'm talking about enormous spinning space stations with artificial gravity, bases on the moon and Mars, fuel depots for deep space missions. All of these things are currently just science fiction. But once it's possible to actually start sending up hundreds of tons of material to low Earth orbit, that science fiction is going to start becoming reality once again. And it's worth noting that this doesn't just apply to space travel. The upcoming augmented reality revolution is primarily just holograms being implemented in real life. And the pioneers of artificial intelligence have many warnings about the potential catastrophic outcomes of their creation. Because science fiction doesn't just exist to show what we should do in the future, it also shows what we should not do. Which brings me back to shows like Black Mirror. Quite a few things from this show are already happening in real life. Charlie Brooker, the creator of Black Mirror, is taking a break from the show. He said, "At the moment, I don't know what stomach there would be for stories about societies falling apart. After all, why have Black Mirror Season 6 when we're already living it?" As a futurist, I personally find it harder and harder to stay hopeful about the future. Does SpaceX even have enough time to set up a secondary colony on Mars? Or will climate catastrophe drive our civilization to collapse first? I don't really know, to be honest. But if sci-fi is any indication, then it really seems like humanity is a lot more interested in pretending we'll have a fantastic technological future rather than actually working to achieve one.